Well, I'm Nelsie Yang. I'm your council member elect in St. Paul Ward 6. I'm so excited about our win because I feel like more is possible, and more than ever. And we just recently had a news article come out about our council member having more like folks of color elected to the city council. And I feel like every single day we're getting closer to a more representative leadership here in St. Paul. I made a decision to run knowing that, people with my identity were always left out of the system, and knew it was going to be really tough, but that I needed to do this because there's never really a perfect time to run. You got to do it if you have the heart and the passion to really fight through and fight for people. Ranked choice voting was such an asset to the campaign, because for the very first time, I want to say for the very first time in a long time, we had such a incredible slate of candidates that were, diverse in race, in age, and so much more. It really gave people a lot of choice, and people were also very afraid to make a choice that would, hurt would make another candidate sad, or like disappoint them. And it felt so good for people to be able to really rank all their candidates and choose the person who was, who best aligned with their values, and then for them to be able to make other choices too about who they wanted to put on their ballot. I feel like because we live in a community where we all care about each other, the hardest part is making a choice that maybe would hurt somebody else's feelings. And I feel like ranked choice voting really opened up the ground for people to be able to use all their choices and not leave anything on the table. I can't name how many conversations I have with people where they said, there's most of you are all people of color in the race. Or like there's two Hmong women, we're not really sure who to vote for. And then when I presented to them, or when my team presented to them about ranked choice voting, people were just more energized about going out to vote. And I feel like that's something that's so important. Like, our democracy is all about making sure that people have a voice, and when they feel, and our goal should always be to open that up, and make sure that people feel dignified, feel empowered to go out and vote, or just really raise their voice. And I feel like ranked choice voting does that for everyone. And one of the things that I like most about my experience as an organizer, not as a candidate, but when I was still organizing, running campaigns, I was able to see candidates of color, especially, who did not come from, like the establishment or the status quo. I saw them win their campaigns because of ranked choice voting. I mean, it's so important to name that we live in a political system where so many people are disenfranchised, are marginalized, especially folks of color, the LGBTQ community, immigrants, refugees. I mean, you come from those backgrounds and you run, you have to fight like twice or three times as hard just to be able to win your campaign. And I feel like ranked choice voting really levels the playing field for everyone. And for the folks who feel like ranked choice voting is going to decrease someone's chance of winning, like, it's not true at all. I feel like in my race, it really allowed us to see even more who the people's choice was after we counted all the votes. There is a difference in messaging and conversations when ranked choice voting is implemented, like in your elections. The first thing that pops to mind is when people said to me, "I support you." I had to ask and make sure, hey, am I your first choice? because I often ran into people who just said broadly, "Yeah, I support you," and I didn't know how they were ranking me on their ballot, and so it made the conversation much more intentional. I was able to dig deeper into my conversations with people and get to learn a bit even more about them, like what they cared about. And the other thing is, I feel that when ranked choice voting is being implemented, it just really builds much more of a stronger camaraderie into the entire elections as a whole. I feel like it makes candidates see that, hey, this is not a race about you against me or me against you or them, or whatnot at all, but it's more about us, working as a collective. Like, if there was a candidate who I felt more aligned with, like, I would be able to go to them and say, well, what do you care about? This is what I care about too. are you interested in us, actually teaming up, or, do you think that we have other alliances, running in the race as well? And so it really opens the door for people to actually like think strategically about how they want to be running together instead of against each other in races. And I feel like this is so important because we often see how people turn away from politics because they see the corruptness, and they see how they see the dirty politics or tactics that are being used against, like, between campaigns. And we don't want to actually live in a type of politics where it's about that. We want to live in a type of politics where it's empowering, positive, and it's about us. And I feel like I was able to really see that blossom in our campaign. When it comes to like other candidates, young folks, renters, people who overall are just come from a community where they're typically like they tend to be marginalized from our political system. And if they're running and there's ranked choice voting, I would say the most important thing is actually to get to know your other colleagues at the table who are running with you, because the best thing is that with your constituents or your voters being able to rank their ballot, you also get to rank your ballot too. And for me, when I ranked my ballot, I wanted to make sure that who I was ranking as my second choice, my third choice, that these were people who my voters also knew that I felt really passionate about too. Because if in the end it wasn't me who got elected, I would hope that the people who shared my same values, my second or third choice, were the folks who would be elected. And when people asked me like who my second or third choice was, or even more, I was very honest with them. And I felt so good being able to do that, because elections aren't actually just about our election, like, this year, for example. It's actually about the long run and what we want to build together as a collective. And whoever is put into office, like, is going to be such a key decision maker of all of that. And we really need to make sure that we put the best person reflecting our values into that seat. And I feel that, because I was somebody who was committed to ranking my ballot, and I knew who was going to be my second through sixth choices, I felt I was able to bring more people along with me into the ranked choice voting process and make people feel very empowered to do the same thing too. The other thing is to also like be respectful and like build working relationships as well. In what I've seen in past campaigns and like politics before is like sometimes people would just it would feel so much like a fight about like, why am I better than you, and you're not good at all, you're not good enough, or all that, and like that actually like really severs relationships even after the campaign is done. But ranked choice voting really allows the opportunity for people to actually get to know each other, for candidates to build a bond with each other and working relationships, so that you get closer to election day especially, that's when you're gonna really be want to connect with other candidates and ask to be their second choice or third choice, and you won't be able to do that if you don't have a good relationship in the first place. Ranked choice voting really opens up a lot of doors I noticed that in my campaign, like a lot of the issues I talked about were very, very progressive issues. And they were like big, bold ideas, like, livable wages for everybody, making sure that that we have fully funded public schools, and that we are taking climate action and like really moving toward clean air, water for everybody, and like clean renewable energy as well. These are typically like issues that I don't often hear being put at the forefront of like local city council races, because people often feel like it's so far removed, we can't accomplish that in our city, but we actually can. And I feel like in my race, I was the one who was talking about these very big, bold ideas, much more further left than where my other colleagues were. And for them to, if my other colleagues at the table wanted to really like garner the support of my first choice supporters, it would have really it would mean that they would need to be so much closer, to where I am in like really championing these issues. And I feel like, I was able to like pull folks in, and also our supporters, like they were just very grounded in why these issues were important to them. So they're not willing to budge. So the only way that another candidate would be able to get like the second or third choice vote is if that candidate themselves was willing to actually move toward championing these issues. And like that's very powerful. That's like that is why when I say voters are powerful, it's because of that, because our voters are really the people who are determining what platforms are, and like really determining who the kind of like the political landscape overall. Like ranked choice voting really like pushing candidates to be bolder and to be more courageous about these issues that tend to be left off the table. I just want to say Fair Vote did such an amazing job partnering with Ramsey County to count ballots and get that whole process just finished. It also makes me see that we really need to support the ranked choice vote system so that we actually have the resources we need to be able to get ballots counted on the day of. Give our people in the community, the voters, an answer about who their next council member or representative is. I want to see ranked choice voting be implemented everywhere. I continue to be very frustrated with legislators who want to preempt ranked choice voting, just like how they want to preempt livable wages, $15 minimum wage, earn sick and save time, and more. And that's why I'm always so vocal in really resisting that and making sure that legislators know that's not okay. I would love to see it statewide. I'd love to see it be implemented throughout our entire country, especially knowing that there are places just like the East Side where it's like so deeply marginalized and disenfranchised. And for us to be able to lift up every single city, every single state, across our country, it's a win for everybody.